Good morning. So Wednesday, they told us we had a ceasefire and that it would start on Sunday. Thursday, they murdered about 80 Palestinians and told us there was no ceasefire. Now, today, it's reported Israel's security cabinet approves the ceasefire deal. What happened? Let's connect some dots and find out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Greetings and welcome, as always, to the Connecting the Dots podcast. I'm Dr. Wilmer Leon. You know, people have a tendency to view events as though they happen in a vacuum. And what we try to do here on Connecting the Dots is we try to have probing, provocative, and in-depth discussions that connect the dots between current events and the broader historic context in which they occur, enabling you all to better understand and analyze the events that impact the global village in which we live. The question before us today is a question that we discussed on Wednesday. What in the world is going on? Do we have a ceasefire or don't we? Because as I said in the tease, Wednesday, they told us we had a ceasefire. People were dancing in the street, dancing on top of cars. People were hugging. Israelis were looking forward to the release of captives. And then Thursday, the IDF goes in and does what the IDF does, murders people. And we're told there's no ceasefire. And then today, what do they report in the Washington Post? They report that the Security Council or the Security Committee in Israel has approved, the Security Cabinet has approved the ceasefire. What's happening? What's real? Let's connect some dots with my guest. He is an award-winning journalist and analyst and activist. He is based in Beirut, Lebanon. He is the founder of Free Palestine TV. He is Laith Marouf. As always, my brother, thank you. First of all, man, you are always so gracious when I call you. I greatly appreciate it. Welcome.
Great to be with you, as always, Wilmer. Thank you for having me.
And let me just quickly say, Movie Maker Joe says this should be interesting. Dr. Leon is an outward peering liberal. I don't know what that means. I'm a political scientist that just tries to tell the truth. I don't know if I'm outward looking, inward looking. If that's a compliment, Movie Maker, thank you. But
I think he's trying to say, although I would never label you as a liberal, I think the word liberal is an insult now for people on the left or on the right anyways, but he means like that from your positionality, you still look out and actually, take in facts and not be positioned by your ideology.
And it's the term liberal, to your point, that I have issue with, because those labels can be very dangerous. With that having been said, so Wednesday, we have a ceasefire. So we're told. Except Netanyahu said, no, you don't. Thursday, we don't have a ceasefire. The thing seems to be unraveling before our very eyes. And now, mysteriously, the Security Council, the Security Cabinet, Ben-Gvir and the whole crew, okay. In fact, Ben-Gvir came out and said, I'll only agree to this if we can resume the conflict in 45 days. Laith Marouf.
Yeah, so remember, this all started with Trump saying that he wants a ceasefire before his inauguration, or they'll be held
to pay.
Yes, so ultimately what we saw and what we still see right now is theatrics to, on the one hand, usher in the era of the new emperor, with this idea that he is a strong man, that he can rein in the factions within the imperial domains, including the Zionist. And, Netanyahu is delivering this for him, this theatrics that he is a strong man. But Netanyahu basically held on, not accepting the same deal that was put on the table 8 months ago by Biden, just to deliver this as a gift to Trump. And he's playing it even now, Netanyahu and the other factions within his coalition, again in a theatrical manner, because Ben Gvir and Smotrich sold themselves as even more fanatical than Netanyahu to their populace. They're the ones that went out of their way to defend the Israeli soldiers that raped Palestinian prisoners on camera. And now they're having to play out a game to justify to their own population that votes for them that how come they're accepting this surrender, basically, and admittance that they couldn't defeat Hamas and the Palestinian resistance in Gaza. And so everything that we're reading from the Israeli media right now is total propaganda, and everybody's playing a role in this theatric. The ultimate thing is that we know before midnight on the inauguration of Trump, this ceasefire will come into effect, and the 5 steps of it that include the total withdrawal of the Israeli military from all of the Gaza Strip by 45 days, and the beginnings of the reconstruction of the Strip. This is what we know are the steps, as well as, of course, the exchange of prisoners of war between two sides. Anything else you hear beyond the details that are on the paper and the facts that you'll see play out on the ground at this moment is very important for the viewers to just ignore it as pure propaganda.
The Washington Post reports a senior Hamas official speaking on the condition of anonymity because he is not authorized to speak to the media, told the Post that the parties reached a final agreement today, Friday, for the first phase of the ceasefire, slated to last 42 days, and it starts on Sunday. One of the things that I find very interesting is when you listen to the Hamas side of the conversation, it's consistent. It's clear. They are saying we're agreeing to the very same terms that the Biden administration put on the table weeks ago. When you listen to the Zionist Israeli side of the conversation, you have no idea what the hell is going on. Again, Netanyahu says no. Smotrich says, I'm going to quit the government and bring you down. Then you've got Israeli negotiators coming out in Qatar saying, we got a deal, we got a deal. So the consistency seems to be, and there then says to me, the honesty seems to be coming from the Hamas side, and the obfuscation and the confusion seems to be coming from the Israeli side.
Yes, definitely. And this is all because of, for the whole 16 months of this genocide, the Netanyahu government and Smotrich and Ben Gvir were speaking in maximalist language, talking about the Amaleks and the Philistines and wiping them out, and talking about total defeat of Hamas and wiping their existence away, and making Gaza into a parking lot and creating new settlements, and Ben Gvir and Smotrich representatives going inside Gaza and putting stakes for new colonies that they want to build there. This was all maximalist language. And suddenly they're having to sign on to a ceasefire where none of those maximalist aims were achieved. In fact, we're going back to step zero, which is total withdrawal of the Israelis. Until last minute, as we're speaking right now, Hamas is ambushing Israeli soldiers and killing, on average, every day, 5 to 10 Israeli soldiers. So it's how are they going to sell it? And the best way you can sell it is to confuse everybody. So you have, because there's no way, if you have one message from the Israeli government that is easy to read, then you look at what was negotiated. It's a clear admittance of defeat. So therefore, all of the parties are playing this, from the Israeli side, are playing this total confusion of the audience in Israel in order not to have an axe fall on their head from their voters.
So some of the captives will be released over a 42-day period. Palestinian prisoners, and we're talking about men, women, and children. What have the children done? Why have the children been detained and been tortured in such horrific conditions? The Israeli forces will withdraw from Gaza, which they have basically decimated and turned 90% of it into rubble. So what's to come of this now? Go ahead.
At least 600 Palestinian children will be released. Look, these are all prisoners of war. Both sides should be, I think the legal term for us to talk, so we don't have to jump around, captives or, whatever it is. There's prisoners of war. For every Israeli soldier captured by the Palestinians, there will be 50 Palestinian men. This is above and beyond the 600 Palestinian children that will be released. And for every Israeli female soldier that the Palestinians are holding, there'll be 100 Palestinian women released. This is according to the deal. Ultimately, less than half of the Palestinian prisoners currently being held in Israeli dungeons will be released in this deal. But that's still a huge number. We're talking thousands of Palestinian prisoners released, and it'd be interesting to see the reaction on the ground, both in Gaza and the West Bank and Jerusalem, when these men and women and children are released to their towns and villages. It will be a moment of celebration for the Palestinian people, but a moment also of somber sadness to remember that there's still so many Palestinian prisoners being held in Israeli dungeons, and of course the heavy price of destruction of Gaza and the martyrdom of tens of thousands of Palestinians to free our prisoners. So what's to come next? We live in a chaotic world. There's no more international law. There's no more international agencies that can govern relations between nations that have any weight on anything. And the irrationality of the Israeli and American governments is only increasing with the coming of Trump. And we're really unable to analyze anything currently. We cannot even predict, I think, a month from now what's going to be happening, not only in Palestine, in the whole region, what's going to happen in Syria when Trump comes in, what's going to happen in Yemen, what's going to happen in Iran, what's going to happen in Canada, Greenland, and Panama. You see, like the world right now is so unpredictable. So, and although it's 45 days for ceasefire for Gaza, or 42 days, as you mentioned, there's also the end of the 60-day ceasefire in Lebanon, which will come on the 27th, so a little bit over a week from today. So again, what's going to happen on that front I don't know. I can't analyze at this point. I've been analyzing things for years, and I've never felt so unsure of what the future is ever.
In fact, to your point about, we can't predict, when you just said we can't predict what's going to transpire a month from now, I'm saying we can't predict what's going to transpire between now and Sunday. And I think a lot of people misread this statement, misunderstood this statement when the statement was made. During the last election, a journalist asked Russian President Putin, "Who would you prefer?" Or no, this might have gone back to 16, or maybe he was asked the question twice. Who do you prefer, Biden or Trump? And Putin said Biden. And folks were scratching their heads, and he said, Donald Trump is unpredictable. And I don't think a lot of people really understood what Putin was saying. This was not his answer, had nothing to do with Democrat or Republican. It had nothing to do with policy. It had nothing to do with the actual individuals. It had to do with, do you favor stability as a world leader? Do you favor stability or instability? And he chose stability, as anybody would. And so what I think we're seeing right now, this is a very long-winded way of getting to this. Trump said, you better have this solved by the time I get into office, or there's going to be hell to pay. Now we've got a ceasefire, which is supposed to start on Sunday. He's being sworn in on Monday. Are there any real correlations between Trump's statement and where we are now? Or was the Biden administration actually able to push this thing over the goal line?
Look, I don't think the Biden administration...
Does that question make sense?
Yes. The Biden administration actually would have done anything that Israel wanted. And, clearly Blinken and who ran the whole outward posturing of the United States, not only his foreign affairs, was a Zionist and still is a Zionist. We saw what happened in his press conference yesterday, his last press conference with journalist Sam Hosseini and others, calling him a war criminal and saying why he's not in The Hague. Point is, I think the Biden administration would have done anything Netanyahu wanted. The thing about Trump is not that he's irrational. I think he knows a lot, and we've heard him many times, criticize Netanyahu and the Israelis as the ones that don't want the war, the peace with the Palestinians. And we saw his video sharing of a speech by Professor Sachs calling Netanyahu a son of a bee, and so what is clear about Trump is that he feeds on instability. Mm-hmm. He likes his opponent to be unsure of what the hell the guy is going to do, right? So what Putin was saying is that he rather a rational or clear, easy to predict enemy than a unpredictable adversary. Okay, so because once now Trump even threw that talk about Greenland, Canada, and Panama, and changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, you saw how that threw the whole continent of North America and Central America into chaos, and its markets into chaos, and then he's going to profit whichever way. Okay, so he plays this game, and even him talking about this idea affected what's happening on the ground in Ukraine. It's affecting what's happening here, because the United States cannot occupy a whole continent and advance on Greenland and Canada if it's running war in Ukraine, in the Middle East, and trying to have war with China. So nobody knows where he's going. And it is a smart move. Everything that he's been doing, he's not a stupid person. Although, I don't like him. He's not a stupid person. He's definitely playing a smarter game than Biden, and therefore it's and the core of his game is this unpredictability.
Well, let's unpack that a little bit, because I think the desired end result by the Trump administration and the desired end result by the Biden administration, as it relates to the plight of the Palestinians, is the same desired result. What I hear the difference is rhetoric. And I believe Biden's rhetoric is based on a white supremacist, imperialist worldview. I don't believe that Donald Trump, and I'm not saying that Donald Trump is a stupid man, because he's not. He's a marketeer. He clearly understands how to tell which way the wind's blowing, or put his ear to the ground and figure out which way the traffic's moving. But I don't think that he has a worldview. I don't think that he has a understanding of the geopolitical dynamic. He's a transactional guy. And so I believe he can be swayed, and many people say it's the last person in the room, it's the last person in his ear that has the most impact on the direction that he goes. So you and I aren't arguing this point. We're I think just talking about nuance. But your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I think with the Biden administration, it was clear the issue is Zionism.
Mm-hmm.
Look, we all, of course, understand how important Palestine is as a geopolitical position, and why the United States has to have control over it to be able to project power over West Asia, North Africa, and all the waterways and oil and gas fields. But it's been since the collapse of the Soviet Union that the United States has control of most of the Arabic countries anyways, with or without Israel being there. So if the sore thumb and the festering wound of Palestine, could have been solved by the empire, even throwing away Israel, it wouldn't have changed the ability of the West to control those important waterways and the sources, and project power by continuing to have their bases in Qatar and Bahrain and Saudi and whatever. So why is the United States investing so much of its own reputation and future and power on maintaining the Zionist colony if it's not an ideological issue? You see,
because the father of his son-in-law has told him so.
Yes, so I think maybe Trump is not a 100% convinced Zionist.
Okay.
Yeah, he has his family members and his son-in-law, but he's a capitalist.
Correct.
Right, and what's her name? That billionaire's wife that gave him $100 million to, not Soros, the other lady. He died, her husband, one of the billionaires that was also funders. Sheldon Adelson, right?
Right.
So she gave him $100 million so he can give the West Bank to Israel during his campaign. That's the promise. Mm-hmm. Well, he'll do that for $100 million, but he's not doing it because he is a Zionist himself. Biden and Blinken are 100% Zionist.
You and I are on the same page.
Okay.
We're on the same page. Well, he'll do it for $100 million and a hotel, because he wants his name on top of that. When I think when his son-in-law, whose name now escapes me, Kushner, when Jared Kushner made the statement about beachfront property in Gaza and building condos, that to me is what is motivating Donald Trump. I don't think he's a Zionist. I don't even think he knows what Zionism is. But he understands condos, he understands beachfront, he understands hotels. And that to me is his guiding light or motivating factor, where Joe Biden is a stone cold Zionist.
Yeah.
My opinion. I've never talked to Donald Trump. My mother-in-law has, but I've never and gotten into a big fight with him. But anyway, that's another story. So where now is Al-Sisi in Egypt in this? Where is Mohammed bin Salman or Bonesaw? Where are they now in this as it relates to their people in their countries?
Yeah, I mean, we saw the last week the Israeli media begin kind of a campaign of attacks on Egypt and Sisi's government because the Egyptian government was moving military into Sinai. And then we saw these videos of Egyptian HTS members saying that they're ready to create a war in Egypt to overthrow Sisi. And so I think that was all before this ceasefire got signed. Clearly, at that point, there was some hope still by these Zionists to expel the Palestinians from Gaza into Sinai, which the Egyptian military will never allow. And even though that Egypt is a vassal currently of the United States. The Saudi regime just, gave a statement, I think, a day and a half ago, their foreign affairs, saying that they will not be normalizing with Israel until there is a Palestinian state declared in the 1967 territories and the return of the Arab lands that are occupied by Israel, meaning the Golan Heights and some parts of South Lebanon. So these are the statements from these two vessels that clearly indicate, and movements of them that clearly indicate that they don't feel Israel is as strong as it was even 10 years ago or just a year and a half ago, that it can dictate on them anything. So I think we will see a different relationship between Trump and Israel and Trump and the other Arab vessels, the Gulf countries namely, because of the shifting in power. No matter what happened in Gaza, the reality is Israel has suffered a military defeat unlike any other. This is the longest war that it was involved since its foundation, and it got a whipping. It wasn't able to defeat the Palestinian resistance inside a besieged concentration camp called Gaza. It couldn't defeat the South Lebanon resistance, Hezbollah. It couldn't defeat Ansarullah. And it lost most of its air defenses, its capabilities, its industrial zones destroyed, its all of the brain drain of Zionists going to Canada, the US, Europe, and Australia. So it cannot project power on the other vessels in the region. And we are seeing now those other vessels, including Turkey and Saudi and Qatar and Egypt, starting to speak in louder voices to the ear of the master in the White House.
Zun Yun says, you say that Donald Trump is smart, but then how can he not know what Zionism is? And then U.S. Navy vet says, Zun, good point. Well, the answer to that question is very simple. First of all, anybody ever heard the term idiot savant? There are people in the world that are brilliant in a particular limited area, and then are clueless in everything else. I can be a master of mathematics and have no clue or understanding about history. I can be a brilliant biologist and know nothing about baseball. I mean, so Donald Trump is a smart guy. He got elected president twice. You don't do that being an idiot. Even an idiot savant. You don't do that being it. He beat Hillary Clinton's behind and whooped Kamala Harris's behind. You don't do that being stupid. But to say that the man is smart, that doesn't, I mean, if you try to play Donald Trump as stupid, Laith Marouf, you're playing at your own risk.
Yes, no, definitely he is not a stupid man, and he knows how to play the audience, and he knows how to
he knows how to market. He's a
exactly
consummate marketeer.
And yeah, and he knows how to destabilize or make his enemy lose their footing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We're all trying to concentrate on what's happening here, and suddenly he throws you that Greenland, Fortress North America idea. Everybody's worried about economic warfare with China. Suddenly he's making economic warfare with Canada. It's there's nobody ready for him. So it doesn't mean that he's not going to go and continue the war here or continue economic war with China.
Mm-hmm.
But by the point of everybody figuring out what he's trying to do, he has at least established some footing whilst your eyes are somewhere else. So this is brilliant, Machiavellian almost.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In nature.
And final point, because I don't want to spend too much time down this rabbit hole because there ain't a whole lot of rabbits down there. But I also think in most of the interactions that Donald Trump is involved in, people have to come to him. And so when you are the one coming to him, you're already at a disadvantage. And he understands, to your point, how to keep you off balance. If he has to deal with a peer equal, that's why he has the people around him that he does. He doesn't have peer equals around him because he doesn't know how to manage in a peer equality environment. And this is why I believe his discussions on this Ukraine conflict are going to be very interesting, because Vladimir Putin doesn't need Donald Trump. Vladimir Putin has kicked Ukraine's behind. He's just sitting back waiting for the United States to cry uncle. And so Putin doesn't need him. Putin can not only deal with Donald. Let me see if I can put it this way and make sense. In this limited issue, Putin is the Donald Trump. He's the one in control. Donald Trump is the one that has to come to Putin to get Putin to the table. And when you throw Xi Jinping, Wang Yi, and Lavrov in the conversation, you bring Donald Trump in the room, you got a pea shooter in a gunfight.
Oh yes. And look, the people that he has surrounded himself with, this is something that's, I think, important for us to realize, is that they are all one-trick pony, and also cannot survive without him. And this includes his son-in-laws and people married into his family. These are all they will collapse without him.
Jared Kushner's father, his son-in-law's dad, is forever beholden to Donald Trump because Donald Trump pardoned him, got his behind out of prison.
Yeah. So everybody, even those crazies that we saw that he's naming to different positions that
Mm-hmm.
are, these are
Pam
individuals
Bondi and
that,
all these fools.
yeah, they are unelectable. They can't run by themselves, and they're one trick pony. And he's allowing. This is the other thing where I think the limit, some lobbying limits may happen now for the Israel Zionists, because even the lobbyists that he surrounds himself with are individuals that he has some say over. So he can ultimately have the last say. And we saw how in his first term, how many people he fired.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone that wagged their tail a little bit, thinking that this position that they're in now can allow them to have more influence over him, he just threw them in the garbage. We couldn't even keep up with the names of people in his first term. So he will do now. This new administration and everybody that's around him have learned the lesson from the first presidency and are going to be even more obedient. So he will have, I think, more say within the government than any presidents in the United States since Nixon, in actuality of control of what the government is doing, instead of all these lobbies and interest having full control. Doesn't mean he's not going to appease these lobbies, but he will do it on his term.
I'm asking you this because I don't hear anybody really factoring Ansar Allah into this whole calculus. And so, yes, the peace deal in Lebanon ends next week. The ceasefire in Gaza starts supposedly on Sunday. But Ansar Allah says we in it to win it. We're not playing. We're not joking. We're going to pour some water on your smoking. So how do the Houthis factor in to this in terms of long term?
Yeah, I think there's two things will factor in and will tell us what's going to happen. Number one is that if the Israelis actually cease fire and not continue to bombard and kill people as they're doing in South Lebanon as we're speaking, then Ansarullah and Yemen will not be firing anything on the Israelis.
Mm-hmm.
But if they do, the Yemen said they will be monitoring this ceasefire and acting accordingly, in those words, which means that if they see the Israelis firing anything on Gaza, they will fire at the Zionist colony. The other thing is that have the Israelis learned their lesson and the United States learned their lesson and leave Yemen on its own? Don't touch it. If Israel decides to go and attack Yemen just for the hell of it to prove itself, then of course Yemen will continue this war with or without a ceasefire on Gaza. And I think the United States, by engaging in war with Yemen on behalf of the Zionist colony over the last year, have put themselves also in a very delicate situation, because they also need to find a ceasefire with Yemen. Yemen wasn't fighting against Israel only. They were firing on American aircraft carriers and shooting down drones and so forth. So if the United States has to declare ceasefire with Yemen, otherwise this will continue also.
So I know this is a multi-point plan. And again, ceasefire for 45 days. IDF forces remove themselves from Gaza. Aid is able now to come in. Aid, or I should say, will be able to come in. But what's the longer term? Because I know I'm asking the same question again, but what happens to Gaza in the longer term? Because there's an article here Likud says, and that's Netanyahu's party. Netanyahu's Likud party says Gaza's ceasefire deal will allow Israel to return to fighting under American guarantee. Now, how much of that is to placate Ben Gvir and Smotrich and the others? But at the end of the day, the objective, the ideology of Zionism is the eradication of the Palestinians. So if that is the core of who they are, you can't negotiate that away. You can't.
Yes.
So go ahead.
Yeah, you can't definitely change, teach an old dog a new trick, and you can't straighten a dog's tail. You got to chop it off. But look, this
is that a sensible question to ask?
Oh yeah. Of course.
Okay.
There's nothing we can never trust a Zionist. Okay, never, ever trust a Zionist. And this war will continue in other means, in other ways, until either the eradication of the Palestinian people completely, and or the end of the Zionist colony. There's no third solution. Okay, and because the fact that the Zionists have these supremacist views of themselves that are maximalist, that call themselves the chosen people and what have you, you can't be an equal with somebody like that. And beyond the situation in Gaza, there's the situation in the West Bank. I mean, 2 days ago, the Israelis fired from F-15s on homes in the Jenin refugee camp in the north of the West Bank, killing 5 or 6 civilians and injuring many more. So it's the situation on the West Bank itself could explode to another Gaza, even if there's a ceasefire in Gaza at any moment. And because of the supposed maybe guarantees of Trump saying that Israel can annex the West Bank, that's a sure recipe for a full explosion of military confrontation inside the West Bank. And we're back to square one in general, and it will affect the whole region again. And who knows what's going to happen in Jordan if that happens. Like, the story is not over now. This is a momentary secession in the long 100-year war since the creation of this fascist colony. And I don't know. I hope for humanity that this Zionist colony collapses by itself. Otherwise, we're going for a war that's going to engulf all of humanity, as we've been tattering on that edge for the last 14 months. And the wound is just exploding in front of everybody's face.
Rampless Sense 01 says, one trick pony. What does that mean? Well, that's a euphemism to describe someone that really can only do one thing. And they may not even be able to do that one thing well. But once you remove their abilities to do the one thing that they can do, they're useless. In fact, it's also a song by Paul Simon. So you might want to look up the lyrics to the song "One Trick Pony" by Paul Simon, because that will explain it as well.
Yeah, and basically what I was saying about Trump having all these people that are each one trick pony, it means they don't know each other's work, and they can't affect it. So maybe somebody has the in with the Zionist lobby, or somebody has the in with the military or the market or whatever, but they're not good with anything else. So they cannot affect his overall policy as a whole.
In fact, U.S. Navy vet mentioned the name Steve Bannon, and I think the relationship, or the failed relationship now between Steve Bannon and Trump, is a perfect example of what you and I have been discussing, because Steve Bannon is a straight up ideologue. Steve Bannon has a belief. Steve Bannon knows how to implement the belief. Hence, he got the president in Brazil elected after he got Donald Trump elected. But Donald Trump could not tolerate a bigger mind. And I'm not saying that I like Steve Bannon. I'm not saying that I think Steve Bannon is right, but you cannot disrespect or dismiss Steve Bannon. Do so at your own peril. And so when you look at the fight that's going on right now between Steve Bannon and Elon Musk, that to me speaks volumes in validating the point that you've been making about the one-trick ponies and the people that are around him.
Yes, and how he can also, as Trump, even though we're still talking about once in a while about Steve Bannon, he really doesn't have that much influence anymore. You see, it's Trump that controls the influence. Similarly, even with Mr. Musk right now. I mean, Twitter is dying, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he needs Trump more than Trump needs
him. Except when you can write that check. and that's how you get he's a transactional individual. So Elon Musk puts in $270 million into the Republican coffers, and so when he makes a phone call, Donald Trump answers the phone. That's how you get on stage standing next to Donald Trump, is you pay for that position. So getting back to, I just want to quickly get back to the statement by the Likud party. Oh, no. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this about the West Bank, because one of the other things that hardly anybody is talking about as it relates to this conflict are resources. Water, access to potable water is a huge element, I believe, in this whole conflict. And nobody's talking about access to water. When was it? You and I used to talk about those gas fields off the coast out in the Mediterranean in Palestinian territory that the Zionists want access to. Nobody's talking about those natural gas and oil rigs that are out there and who's controlling those resources. So particularly as we look at this possibly moving to the West Bank, how are we dealing with the resource issue?
Yes, I mean, the West Bank, the hills of the West Bank, under them is the main water reservoir that feeds all of Palestine. And the rivers, even the big river is the Jordan River, again, is in the West Bank. And then you have the Golan Heights Basin that the Israelis just looted from Syria. All the Yarmouk River Basin and all the waterways that come from the Golan Heights into Syria. That's 1/3 of Syria's water reserve just got looted by the Israelis in the territories they occupied since the fall of the Assad government. And so we can definitely see how water is so important. And the Israelis wanted always to loot the south of Lebanon because of the Litani River. That's the other part of the basin of water that comes off the Golan Heights. So if the Israelis have control of these waterways, rivers and lakes, everybody else in the region will be water thirsty. Look at Jordan. Although it shares the Jordan River with the Israelis, it's not allowed to take more than 10% of the water. The rest goes to the Israelis. And now with the Golan Heights water basin from the Yarmouk River, which Syria used to control, but because of its brotherly relations with Jordan, used to give actually all the water to Jordan and only take electricity from the dams that it has on these rivers. Now Jordan has lost even that water. So they lost 90% of their access to fresh water. We'll see how the Jordanians are going to deal with this reality in the next few months. Although they were part of the plot to destroy Syria and bring all those Wahhabi death squads into the country, now they're paying a price for that. Israel got control of the water that feeds the whole north of Jordan.
Connecting some of these dots here, one of the issues going back to Ukraine, President Putin has been very, very clear about what his security demands are. Ukraine cannot be in NATO. You can't have missiles in Ukraine, and you have to denazify the Ukraine. Let's connect the dot. As we look at this conflict in Gaza escalating now into the West Bank, we know that there are a lot of Zionist nationalists that are attacking innocent Palestinians in the West Bank. So we touched on this a couple questions ago, but this just came to my mind as Putin is talking about the denazification of Ukraine. Is there going to have to be a de-Zionist program to get rid of these settlers in the West Bank?
Yeah, look, if you go to our page on YouTube, by the way, we just reopened the page on YouTube after it was deleted, nuked in the end of December. You can see the reports from the West Bank over the last week. There's been daily attacks by these colonists on Palestinian villages, setting cars and homes on fire, attacking farmers, and so on. It happens every day almost. So keep watch, follow us on freepalestine.video. There's all the links on the website. And I think the settlers, colonists that were being given weapons and sent to the front lines in Gaza are going to now come back to the West Bank, frustrated that they couldn't kill every Palestinian or burn every building or destroy every building, and they're going to act it out inside the West Bank. And they were already acting out currently, but imagine with the return of these soldiers from inside Gaza, what's going to happen? It's going to get ugly. And the Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, both of them live in colonies inside the West Bank. They'll lead these pogroms against the Palestinian indigenous people. And I personally am worried definitely about the West Bank in the next few weeks, what's going to happen there. But I think the Palestinian people for 100 years have shown that they are undefeatable. Their spirit, and they will not cease to resist. And if a full-out conflict breaks out inside the West Bank, the first casualty will be the collaborationist regime of Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian Authority. And we will see the Palestinians inside the West Bank take out these collaborators.
Man, this is not going anywhere good in any way, shape, or form. What are the three things that? Oh, before I get to that, so we talked about Ansar Allah in Yemen and where they are in this. Where is Iran in this now? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's still waiting for Truthful Promise 3 to come.
Mm-hmm.
The Iranians never indicated that it's not going to happen. So it could happen at any moment, especially if Iran feels that there's something being cooked against it. The Iranian government, we heard some leaks, I don't know if they're true or not, but Western media was talking about this, that there's secret meetings between Iran and the European Troika, Germany, France, and the UK, about reviving the nuclear deal. I mean, Trump is the one that ripped that deal, so I don't know if he would want to come back to it, and what is it worth if the United States is not, signing on to it.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, we saw Iran do multiple exhibitions of new weapons and underground cities of hypersonic missiles and ballistic missiles. We also saw them release videos of their new aircraft carrier that is specialized in drones. So it's a drone aircraft carrier. So that's warnings to anybody that's including the Trump government if they're thinking about attacks on Iran. And the longer this plays out, I think, and the more fronts are opened in the region, the more possibility that Iran will be taking more radical actions. Up until now, I think they're going to sit and wait to see the new government of Trump, what direction it's going to take us, and things are going to be revealed very fast because of the 7 days after coming of Trump, the end of the ceasefire in Lebanon, and by the end of February is that the end of the 42 days ceasefire in Gaza. So within a month of Trump coming into power, we will start seeing a clearer, broader lines of the direction that we're going to go into in Palestine and in the whole region.
Final point, Carol says, Wilmer, the Israelis have stated their next target is Africa. I'm betting it's going to break South Africa if all else fails for land and resources in Palestine. Carol, I don't have any debate with that point at all, only to say I don't know that it is Israel that is championing that move as much as it is Israel acting as America's proxy in that regard, the same way that you now find Ukraine involved in the Sahel. Laith Marouf.
Yeah, obviously the whole genocide in the Congo is fueled by Israelis and Israeli weapons and Israeli money and Israeli mining companies. And in South Africa, the Zionists have a vendetta against South Africa because of how close the African National Council and the late Nelson Mandela were to the Palestinians and the Palestinian struggle. And of course, famously, the late Nelson Mandela said, "Our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinians." These were some of his first words when he exited from the jail. And they have a vendetta because of how South Africa dragged the Zionists into the International Court of Justice in the case about genocide. And we saw already how that played out in the elections in South Africa, last year, where the Zionists and all their money and all their media revived the white party, the whites only party, and gave it more seats in the parliament, which forced the government, the governing party, to create a coalition with them. We see how the situation in South Africa is always destabilized, and the country is not allowed to regain control of its natural resources that are still controlled by people like the parents of Elon Musk. So I think yes, Africa and South Africa have to worry about the Zionists plotting against them. But the way forward for African, Latin American, Asian peoples is to, instead of sitting and waiting for the plots against us, to break down even these tiny colonial border countries like South Africa, like Syria, like Yemen, is to our enemy wants to plot to balkanize us and breaks us into smaller and smaller states. Well, we have to work towards erasing the colonial borders, towards expanding and unifying. So Zimbabwe, South Africa, Angola, these are all one people.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all actually part of the colonial holding of South Africa. And they should unify and end these national fabricated borders and look forward to creating a population mass and a land mass and an industrial mass that can guarantee sovereignty forever from colonial control.
My brother, Laith Marouf, man, thank you. Short notice. But again, man, you're always so gracious. Free Palestine .video is where people need to go. freepalestine.video is where you all need to go. That's where you all need to go and contribute to help keep Free Palestine TV on the air. freepalestine.video is where you all need to go. My dear brother, thank you so much again. Stay safe. Greatly appreciate it. Look forward to having you back.
See you soon, Wilmer.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Hey, folks, we will be moving the time of the show starting next week, starting Wednesday, as classes start and I move back to the classroom. So we'll be talking about that next week. Let me say, well, you know what? Let me not put out the wrong time because that'll mess up a whole bunch of folks. So let me just say that. Hey, folks, really need you to go to Patreon. Really need you all to support the program because the resources are low, and we won't be able to keep this up much longer without the support for you all. We do this for you, but can't do this without you. So with that, I got to thank Laith Marouf for joining me today. Thank you all, as always, so much for listening to the Connecting the Dots podcast. Sherry or Cherie, thank you for the compliment on the haircut. I appreciate you noticing. Stay tuned. New episodes next week. Again, we are going to have to move the time of the show because I'm going to be in class from like 8 to 11 every day. Please follow and subscribe. Leave a review. Share the show. Go to Patreon. We got to get to 10,000. We got to get to 10,000, and only you can help us do that. Follow us on social media. All the links to the show are below in the show description. And remember that this is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge, because talk without analysis is just chatter, and we don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. See y'all next week. Until then, I am Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a wonderful, blessed weekend. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.